today supporting Awesome Treasures. I'm here because I believe that as women, if we come together, a lot of things would happen. There's going to be change, and I'm trusting God that, you know, with today's event, a lot more is going to happen for women and for men as well, in the UK and worldwide.
My wife was here last year, and I've seen what she's received from this program. I couldn't but bring myself along when she said she was attending this year.
I have been a lover of Pastor Adenowo for a long time, so I came here to be blessed.
It's my unique pleasure and privilege to host you today. Thank you so much. Could you clap for yourself? You came all the way from Wales, you came from wherever you came from this morning, you left your children, your husband at home, your wife at home, for a reason. We're gathered onto someone who has the ability to change our lives completely. If we were to take all the testimonies that we had here today, we wouldn't go home.
I joined Awesome Treasures in 2012, and I have not regretted one meeting till date. Amazing.
I think Sister Jumoke is amazing. The way she expresses herself, her knowledge of the Word of God is something to be desired. I think she's a gift to the body of Christ.
I think she's one of the most inspiring women I have ever met. With her, she doesn't have to talk to me too much about God. I see her, I know God.
She's such an inspiration. Like, she's done so much with her life already, and she just so many things about her that I want to emulate, and she just inspires me to want to do more.
God is not the problem. He has so much awesome goodness to display on you, but he needs you to meet the conditions. So he says, I, even I, will blot out your transgressions to make it easy for you.
This has God's hand on it.
We're going into our interactive session now, and to do that, I'd like to introduce you to a prodigy. I call her a prodigy because this lady, she went into university at the age of 14 to study architecture, and she graduated with an MSc, the highest grade ever attained in that university. I know she won't let me go on, but ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce the brains, the passion, and the beauty behind Awesome Treasures. Mrs. Olajumoke Adenowo.
Thank you very much. You may be seated. Thank you so much. It's my unique pleasure and privilege to host you today. Thank you so much. Could you clap for yourself? It is my unique pleasure and privilege to host today someone who is respected all over the UK, whom we love, who is a patriarch in the body of Christ in the UK, respected, loved. People are very passionate about him. That's what I've discovered. A man of integrity. Pastor Irukwu to join me. Pastor Agu is a law graduate from the University of Warwick. He was a former barrister and a former investment banker. He serves as the chairman of the Board of Trustees and the head of the Executive Council of the Redeemed Christian Church of God in the United Kingdom. He's the founder of Mandates Men's Ministries. He's a senior pastor of Jesus House. He's married to Pastor Shola. They have 3 children. And we have the unique pleasure and privilege of having him here with us today. Pastor Agu, you're very welcome. You're even looking good, but it's part of the package. Pastor Agu, you're so welcome.
Thank you.
It's such a delight to see you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, can you quickly take us through your early years? Because I know you went to Warwick and everybody, it looks like you sort of arrived here one day.
early years, I was born in Lagos. I went to school in Lagos, primary school, and then I went secondary school at a school that used to be the best school in Nigeria, and we're trying to get it back, a school called Igbobi College. And then I came over here. I went to boarding school on the Isle of Wight. That was my father's plot to keep me away from the bright lights of London. So he found an island that was detached from England and had 2 ferries that brought you to England. And then from there, I spent a year at Crammer in Cambridge, and then I ended up at Warwick University, where I got a law degree. Most riotous years of my life were at university, and after that I couldn't wait to get out of England. I didn't like England. It was cold, it was wet, it was grey, and the people were too civilized. And so I was drawn back to the blessed chaos of Lagos. And then I met Christ in Lagos, and a lot of things changed. I found myself back here in 1994. I was asked by my then mentor, Pastor Tony Irukwu, to come and take over a church that had started for 4 odd weeks before, for a few weeks while they found a substantive pastor. And it was a great opportunity to come and watch football again. We didn't have Sky then. Some of you, I mean, you understand that there was no Sky, so to watch the Premier League, you had to come to England. And so that was a good opportunity for 4 weeks to watch the Premier League. My favorite team, Chelsea, which wasn't doing too good then. And I came for 4 weeks. After 4 weeks, I asked them, have you found this pastor so that I can go back? I was newly married. I'd been married for a few months before, and I'd left my newly married wife, newly pregnant wife, to come and start this church. And 4 weeks, they said to me, we've got a few candidates. We're trying to sort out papers for them and stuff like that. After 2 months, I said, look, have you found this guy? And they said, no, we've narrowed it down. We've really narrowed it down. 2 or 3 people. We're looking very seriously at them. I could just kind of hang in there. By this time, the church had grown from about 30, 40 people to maybe 60, 70 people, something like that. By the 3rd month, I phoned them and said, look, where is this pastor? Because I had a law practice that we just started. They were both born-again Christians. Some of you might know Pastor Kemela Okara and Pastor Gogi Anyaru. Obviously, we got it wrong. All of us ended up pastors, and one of us in politics, so we obviously didn't hear God. By the 3rd month, the church had grown to 70, 80 people, maybe some good days, 100 people. And I was a young pastor. I was 29. The ladies in the church were starting to look after their pastor. Cook for me, want to do my laundry. And you didn't need a prophetess to tell you that this was going to end in disaster. So I said to them, can you send my wife from Nigeria while you're trying to sort out this pastor? Cut a long story short, I'm sure some of you have been there, where you get to a point and you wake up one day and you realize God has tricked you. This was about 5 months now, and by this time, Pastor Tony somehow wasn't as available. I would phone, and he would be in a meeting. I would phone, and he's going to see the GO. I just couldn't get hold of him. And one day, I woke up, and it dawned on me that God had tricked me, and that, at least for this stage of my life, he would have me do what I was doing. So I set myself a target. I'll do it for a few years and then go back to my plans. I had some great plans. I actually thought they were very good plans. And to cut a long story short, it's 22 years. They still haven't found a pastor. So I guess...
I'm sure they're still looking. Wow, so it's been 22 years. Has it just been 22 years of bliss, sipping nectar and ambrosia? What has it been? Because I think you have gone through some personal loss, but you glossed over that.
Yeah, the beauty about testimonies, as I listen to those awesome testimonies, and when those testimonies are amazingly awesome, the beauty about testimonies, and sometimes it's the downside about testimonies, is that you're forced, especially since our master of ceremony was really quite determined to keep everything short and within time, and wasn't he? Didn't he speak so well, our master of ceremony? The beauty, the downside to testimonies is that you compress what was a journey with ups and downs and all kinds of dimensions to it into 3 or 4 minutes. So yes, it's 22 years, going on 23 years, and it has had its ups and downs. We've been through the usual challenges that churches face. We've been through the times when you ask yourself whether God called you to do this thing, and we all go through those moments. We've been through losing our building twice, and seeing the church reduce from 700 people to 300 odd people, and meeting people on the streets of London who would say to me, "Oh, I used to be in your church, but I'm still with you. I'm just at so-and-so church while you sort." Sheep can be brutal. And then in all that, I've also faced the loss of my first wife, someone who I loved very passionately and very dearly, and we had almost the perfect life, and that was one of the biggest storms that I faced in my life. So yeah, there've been some valleys, but trust me, there've been a lot of mountaintop experiences as well.
Pastor Agu, you left everything you had. You came to Pastor. Your dear wife joined you. And then she fell ill, and Pastor, did you feel God was repaying you even for good? Does he still answer prayers? This is what people ask when these things happen. But I've known people say they're not coming to church because their sister died, and they don't see why they have to keep on praying. And then you hang in there as pastor, and then people they mourn, and then they ask you to comfort them when you lose. That's what I noticed with pastors. How did you get through that? Didn't you feel let down?
It's very funny because I have a close friend, Pastor Gandhi. Some of you might know him. He's really is my closest buddy. We talk about everything. And during the journey, he was with me every step of the way, as were some people. Pastor Dupe, my boss in Redeemed. Yeah, I mean, she gave herself to that fight, as she does to everything that concerns me. And so, Gandhi would say to me, and Dupe says the same thing as well, that, are you normal? Because why aren't you breaking down? Why are you still going on? And I remember when Ife passed away, Gandhi said, "We came to mourn with you. You've ended up encouraging us." So he said, what is all
What's
this?
What's the secret?
I think there are a few things. I think firstly, when you read the Bible, you understand that pain, challenges, difficulties, sometimes loss are part of the course of life. Yeah, Pentecostals don't like talking about that because everybody wishes it would be smooth sailing, but it's just there's no character in the Bible. All the characters we admire in the Bible, there's none of them that doesn't have in his CV or her CV a time when the circumstances would drive them to question God. the whole of the Psalms, and we all want David's life. At least we want the end result of David's life. But the whole of the Psalms is God giving us an insight into someone who he himself exalts and puts as a role model for us. But gives us an insight into the journey that that person faces. So the first thing we've just got to understand is that that's life. You know, people face challenges. You know, somebody dealing with a sick child. Somebody is dealing with a child who's just gone totally off course. You know, someone is waiting and waiting and waiting for a child. You know, someone is believing God for a husband. You know, and just waiting, and all their friends are getting married. You know, somebody's business collapses. Someone loses a loved one. Someone falls ill. You know, someone is persecuted, you know, vehemently. And sometimes for things that the person just took a stand for God. So it's just life. That life happens. And I feel that those things, God allows them to happen because out of those things comes a deeper relationship with God. Yeah? And if we profess faith, then the only way to know that it is true faith is to test it. And I say to people that don't get caught up with all this Pentecostal honey that is being thrown around. You know, Pentecostals, we have a selective amnesia concerning the Bible. You know, we don't want to talk about persecutions. We don't want to talk about suffering. We don't want to talk about difficulties. But my God shall supply all my need according to his riches, which is there. It is true, but then there are a lot of other things. And so we don't prepare ourselves for storms, but storms are a part of life. So to hit the nail on the head, and the answer to your question is that somehow God had prepared me for that storm and one or two others that I have faced since then. And what is the preparation? A couple of things. Number one, God places you in a real community. Yeah, people who will reach out to you, hold your hands, walk with you, pray with you. So when I look at people like Dupe and people like Revi, people like Doc, like Gandhi, my immediate community, these guys at some point were praying more than I was praying when I went through some of the storms that I've been through. And that was amazing to me, to see people who've given themselves to standing with you, and people who would encourage you, people who would just be there for you. And they say a burden shared is a burden halved. Yeah. So the first thing God does is a community. So cherish your community, your immediate family, your church community. Cherish it, because when the storm comes, as it will, that community, if you have invested in it, will stand strong with you. The second thing that God does for us to deal with these things, and did for me, is that you can't build a storm shelter when the storm is raging. It's a bit too late then. You just have to just pray and hold on to something. So build the storm shelter before the storm. Yeah? So that when the storm comes, you have somewhere to run into. Now, what do I mean by storm shelter? Settle some things now when it's good. Settle it now. So there are certain things that are settled for me concerning God. There's nothing, if he turns this building upside down, it's not going to change some things that I have settled in my heart concerning God. Amen.
Wonderful. So build a strong community. 2, settle some things now. That settle some things now, it's so important. I say, if God says, I, God, resign from being Lord, I will follow him. Because I don't know where else to go. I don't have there is nobody else we're going to worship. But we don't talk about that anymore. Hebrews 11 says, this all died in faith, not having received the promises. It didn't say they received it. They died and did not receive. But then they are known as heroes of faith. So the yardstick we have for heroes, for successes these days is different, completely different from God's. God's yardstick is they stood in faith. It's not about receiving it. but about standing in faith. That's amazing. I like the fact that we have a real pastor, somebody who can be touched, felt, who isn't so, I don't know, so unreal that it just makes you feel that you don't know God. That's why stuff happens to you. You know what I'm saying? So one day I was passing with my older son, and they're getting a bit anglicized, which I should have sent them to Isle of Wight. Because I have a younger son. Then, do you have steak, Mom? What do you want? Can I have gravy with that? I'm like, there's no need for gravy. We have pomo, we have shaki. Then we're trying to almost eat gravy with the way you don't understand that, but you know what I'm saying? It's really getting one kind. Then he's 13, and he's saying to, sorry, my Nigerian accent popped out. I didn't catch myself out. What I was trying to say at that point, that it was getting a bit funny. And he goes, at 13, Mom, I was just thinking, when I'm done, perhaps I could get like a flat in London, you know? I'm like, a flat in London. Not? They are coming home every half time. Every half time, he's back home. So the older one was saying to me, we're passing by a church in Lagos, and we're going to church. I'm passing by churches. So he goes, why, there's so many churches. Then I gave him my own answer, which is that there are different churches for different people. So what is the USP of Jesus' house? What have you spent 22 years building while waiting for a pastor to take over?
What's the USP?
How is it different?
That's the unique selling point. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I know it's been a while since you've left that investment banking field.
Yeah. Just
some of us are still in the marketplace. Duh. I don't know why. Nollywood. What's that dumb thing about?
I don't know that I'm in the position to answer that correctly, because sometimes you're in something, you're just getting on with it, and then it's people outside who say certain things. I just know that I've always wanted to do ministry. Once I knew this is what I was called to do. I thought I was going to end up a politician, incidentally, and I prepared for it. I remember one of the things I said to Ife when I proposed to her was, I said to her that, you know, I've watched you. We actually had a relationship before both of us got saved, so I knew her very well because both of us had a relationship before we got saved. It's very interesting. And then my best friend, I have two people who are easily my closest friends, a guy called Demola Akinrele, and who's a lawyer, and Gandhi. Now, my best friend, after I broke up with her, ended up having a relationship with her, which was very weird because it was very weird. I'm actually not. I'm not your normal person in how I process things. Once God asked me to do something, I do it. So anyway, he had a relationship with her, and we used to double date. And unfortunately, at that point in time, I was loose. Rampant might be more like it. And so each date, I had a different girl. And I remember when I got married to Ife, she said to me that she thought I had a death wish. She said she thought the doctors had said to me, you're going to die in a year, and I was trying to live out life. Because I lived it to the fullest in a negative sense. And so when he finally broke up with her, actually, I put that wrong. He had the relationship with her before I had a relationship with her. He broke up with her, and while nursing her from this, my friend who had broken up with her, we ended up having a relationship. And then one day she met Jesus, and she chopped me so far and fell in love with this Jesus guy that she had met. And I was intrigued by it, and those were the first seeds that were sown. I just would pop by at her office and ask her, so you're really in love with this guy called Jesus? I think part of me was just amazed that another guy trumped me over this girl. And she would smile, she would minister to me, she'd talk to me. She'd be paragon of beauty, both inside and outside. And then, then she started introducing me to Christ. She told me about a new church that had started called Apapa Parish or something. It was in a cinema. I thought a church in a cinema. I thought, I have to go and see this. I went there. Cut long story short, I gave my life to Christ. And when I gave my life to Christ, I knew that she was my wife. And I remember going to her to say to her that I should marry you. It's the right thing to do. But I don't know if I'm going to do the right thing because, you know, my head is still not sorted out yet. And I said to her something, and this is where I was going. I said to her, one of the reasons I should marry you, amongst other reasons, because I want to become a politician, because I feel that's the only way I can make a difference. I said, and I know that as a politician, I will go to jail. It's part of, if you're really going to do politics in Africa, if you really are going to do politics in Africa, somewhere along the line, part of your CV must be a stint in jail. And I said to her, this was part of me proposing to her, I said to her, one thing I am certain about is that if I go to jail, I can entrust the children and all that I leave behind to you, and you look after it till I come back out. That's why I want to marry you. Yeah. So
we can move to
so with regards to Jesus House, I've always wanted to do ministry differently. I felt that I hate religion with a passion. You know, I feel that the problems of the world were brought about by religion. So I detest religion. I wanted to be involved in a ministry that would be real, not afraid to share our weaknesses, our failings, and our frailties. I wanted passionately to help people to succeed, which is why I wanted to go into politics in the first place. And I wanted to be involved in something that would show excellence in a way that the world would come and see that you can serve Christ and match or better the standards of excellence that you see in the world. Along the lines, I have come to understand that you can't change or transform lives without a deep spirituality that is birthed in the place of prayer. And so for us at Jesus House, prayer is foundational to who we are and what we do. And I guess the results are the things that you see. You know, we don't have airs and graces. We're not religious at all. We're not afraid to change things or challenge things. We're determined to show excellence in what we do. And we try to pray. We try hard to pray. Yeah, I think those, I don't know if those kind of form unique selling points, but that's, I'm sure every other pastor will say,
we should give Jesus House a hand. It works. You're real people, you pursue excellence, you're ready to take on the world, you understand, and you pray. I like the prayer part. You don't want to miss the prayer today for anything. You need to pray. So, as we begin to round up, are we looking at, I've looked at something, I think that all of us here, there are a lot of people who are in the diaspora in this building, and I believe we shouldn't be in ghettos. You understand? We should be here to make a difference. We carry something. That's the whole idea of Awesome Treasures coming to the UK. That's the message of Awesome Treasures in the UK, that you carry something, you're an awesome treasure. The UK does not know yet who is sitting right next to you. You know what I'm trying to say? There's something about you. Where are we going, Pastor Agu? What's the future? What do you see you? He was voted the most inspirational black man in the UK. You need to clap. I need a selfie. I know very important people. Yes. So, where do you think, as the most inspirational black man in the UK, what is the next step? A deeply spiritual, most inspirational
black man. It's not rocket science to figure out how that happened. The whole of the Redeemed Christian Church of God voted for me. I became most inspirational black man. So
you should be most self-effacing, inspirational black man. But give him a hand all the same. You have to own it. Pastor Ag, own it. Okay, so where are we going from here? What are we doing about the nation? Nation, you are tricked to stay. Somewhere you know, this is very strong. You departed from here. And you thought that was it. You're not coming back. So you're not here by your will. You're here because somebody wanted you here. What is the plan of the person who wanted you here? We've seen the past. We're proud of you. Well, what does the future hold? Does it involve us? I could give you some time to think and ask.
No.
Okay.
I can. This is what I do. I talk. So it's the only gift I have. I'm not multi-talented like some people. I just have one or two gifts.
You can model if you're DJ.
I can? Okay, that's one I should maybe look at. But in case you guys fire me from Redeemed, I'm going to become a model or something. It's a bit too late for that at this age. But the first thing I want to say is that in looking to the future, we must celebrate the past. And I say this because I've seen a journey of progression that sometimes can be overlooked. When we started the church 22, 23 years ago, most of the people in the church, there were different groups. So there were the students whose parents were in Africa, mostly, different parts of Africa, and who had been sent here to school. So the parents were subsidizing them. And then there were quite a number who had come in search of a better life. Yeah? And quite a number of them were professional in one way or another. But because they came into a whole new setting, they had to start at the bottom of the ladder. And so, my wife, Shola, she was dentist, and she came here. But to just make ends meet, she had to clean in a dental surgery. And you can imagine how that batters your psyche, because you know what to do with all this equipment. You're trained, you're qualified as a dentist. But just to make ends meet, she worked part-time. They let her work 2 or 3 days part-time as an assistant, and then 2 or 3 days cleaning the surgery. And there were a lot of people who were in that position. Now, you look on 22, 23 years, and I can name quite a number of people, including my personal dentist, who owns her surgeon, and whose clientele is, particularly the area of the world where she lives, is predominantly a local Caucasian clientele. Now, she would probably have been where Shola was 20-something years ago, just trying to take her conversion exams and stuff like that. So we had a church that was full of people who were driving taxis, flipping burgers in McDonald's, and there's nothing wrong with those jobs. Have dignity in what you do, but don't stay there for too long. Yeah? And so there has been progress that we must acknowledge. We must be thankful to God and acknowledge it. That's very important. We also must be grateful to God for things that happen that give an immigrant community an edge. There are certain things in this country that work against an immigrant community. And there are certain things that close out certain places. There are certain professions that are locked down. You want to become an architect, you're going to have to break a brick wall. You want to become a lawyer, and you don't want to become a lawyer that is in some firm that nobody recognizes. You want to become a lawyer, especially if you want to become a barrister, you're going to have to break a brick wall. Because those things are kind of closed shops. There's an old boys network. You've got to speak in the right way. You probably have to go to the right school. If you don't go to the right school, you must excel so much. And which is why I say to people, you have to find a way to make yourself noticed. So if you don't go to certain schools, and I don't want to necessarily name the names of the schools, and you don't go to certain universities, you end up in some other universities, you have to get a first class. But not just a first class, because there are many who are getting first classes. You have to, for example, have a language. You have to maybe have played rugby or done something that makes you stand out. Because there are tens of thousands of you with 2-1s. You know, my son just finished at uni. He's applying for jobs. And he said, Dad, it's incredible. There are thousands of us. I said, yeah, everybody has a 2-1. That 2-1 doesn't do anything. You know, so what do you have that you can add to that sets you apart? Yeah, you've got to do that. But then God sometimes comes with grace. And the grace, and not sometimes, all the time. And the grace that God came with for the immigrant community, Jumoke, is IT. Because you see, with the IT, with the entrance of this whole IT boom, especially years ago, you don't have to speak right. All you have to do is code it right. Write the software. Yeah? You don't have to learn to hang out at the pub where the real decisions are taken after work. Yeah?
Every country.
You don't have to learn that with IT. If you're doing any other thing, you better go to the pub. Even if you don't drink a Coke
or cranberry juice.
Because the directors are there having a drink.
Yeah.
And that's where they are going to get to know you. So get off that religious high horse of, I don't go to pubs, I'm going home to pray. You will be in the same position. Yeah? So the thing with IT was that there was a need. Who can write this software? Who can crack this code? Who can solve this problem? And guess what? The immigrant community was ready. We had a few things going for us. We were audacious and bold. So I had guys in church who would apply for a job, have no clue about it, and would get there and be on their mobile phones talking to other guys who were experts. And pardon the pidgin English, say, oh boy, how we go do this thing? Which means, for those of you who don't speak pidgin English, brother, can you kind of help me, crack this thing? And you didn't have to hang out at the pub. You were judged by whether you delivered. Now, what happened then was phenomenal, and people don't acknowledge it. All of a sudden, a group of people were taken from where they were by the resources they had and transported to a new realm. Because suddenly they were earning, from flipping a burger, they were earning 500 pounds a day, 700 pounds a day. I had guys in church who were earning 1,000 pounds a day. I actually considered going to learn IT. I seriously considered it. And what then happened, when it collapsed, they already had resources. So they could train themselves. They could invest in property. They could buy a nursing home. They basically could do stuff. They could invest back home, wherever home was, in Zimbabwe, Congo, Nigeria, Ghana, wherever it was. And so we must celebrate what God has done as we look to the future. It's very important. So look into the future on that platform, because God has been faithful. We must aspire for more. Yeah? We must aspire to own the land. Because you see, until you become landowners, you don't have any stake. Yeah? We must leverage on what are graces and gifts that God has given a lot of immigrant communities. Yeah? And what are those graces and gifts? Number one, grit, determination. I'm definitely not going back there. So whatever it takes, I have to pay that price to get on. Number two, education. Yeah? A lot of us come from cultures where there's a premium on education. Yeah? I know parents who have suffered to send their children to some of the best schools in the land. We must do that. Number 3, we must add to what we have so that we can stand out. Please, go and learn a language, please. And guess what? In these days of Google, you don't have to leave your bedroom to become proficient in a language. There are apps that will do better than most teachers. You see, because you must add value to yourself so that you can be reckoned with as someone of value. Yeah? And so whatever it is, add value to yourself. Learn a skill, learn a language, add something that sets you apart when they're looking at the rest. And lastly, we must exercise the grace that we have as people of faith and people who pray. You see, because ultimately it revolves around that. And we pray by virtue of where a lot of us have come from, and we must pass that on to our children. Because, you can't come from Nigeria or Zimbabwe or Congo, or Sierra Leone and not pray. You have to pray for electricity. You have to pray for water. You have to pray that you drive across the city and come back safe. You just pray for everything. So there's already a culture of prayer and faith, and we must use that. And Jumoke, I think if we are applying these things, then from where we are and we celebrate what God has done, we're grateful for what God has done, we can launch to the next stage, and that next stage promises to be glorious.
We're rounding up now, but I'd like to throw these questions to the audience, How do we take the nation? How, for instance, is there anything you are doing in taking the nation that very briefly you think we can listen to? I see... How do we take the nation? Omoni, are you taking the nation where you're coming from? Do you have a microphone? I need a microphone, because we spent, okay, normally we're usually in the crowd. You need to give Pastor Ago a hand for... rise and say, how do we, because I look at taking the nation. He's a pastor. He can inspire people to go ahead and take the nation, Reverend Celia, isn't it? But he can't be everywhere. He needs to decode it and break it down. I like that break it down thing. There's a new thing, optics. Do you use optics yet? Now I have optics on everything now. Everything I say has optics in it. Until another slang comes into the business. And so what's the optics on taking the nation?
Is it afternoon yet?
Yeah.
Well, it's still morning. Good morning, everybody.
They say Nigerians are late. It's morning.
It's morning. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to say a very big thank you to Pastor Agos. First time I'm hearing you speak, and I am totally in awe. We totally love you. 4 of us sitting here, we're like, oh my gosh, she's so real. You're really, really real, and that's amazing. I like the fact that you absolutely hate religion. That's okay. That's okay. It's okay to be a groupie. I love the fact that you absolutely hate religion, because religion is what's putting us where we are today. So that's amazing. Thank you so much. It's great being under your administration. Okay, so talking about...
administration notes.
Talking about taking the nation, I believe we all have our different roles to play. Personally, as an actor and a filmmaker, I'm doing so with my work, right? So I try my very best to make movies that will inspire, movies that will change the status quo. So one of my most popular movies that I'm known for is Wives on Strike. I don't know who's heard about Wives on Strike. Yay, yay, yay! My people are here, yay! Okay, so Wives on Strike basically was a story about a group of local market women who decided to take a stand, and the senator's wife. Yeah, because she's here, so she has to make sure that...
Come on, let's see the senator's wife, Sarah, something. Stand up. Let's see. Okay.
So it was about a group of local market women who decided to take matters into their own hands when an underage girl was going to be married off to a much older woman, older man, I'm sorry. So a 13-year-old girl was going to be married off to an Alaji, and the women decided, we're not going to sit here and this would happen under our watch. So they decided to fight for it. They actually went as far as fighting the government. They went on a sex strike. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that here. So they took all the women in Nigeria on a sex strike to fight the marrying of an underage girl. And generally underage girls. So that was what the movie was all about. Now we're shooting a sequel. Actually, that's why we're in London. Apart from Awesome Treasures meeting. We're doing both. You're killing two birds with one stone. See, so what I did was I made sure that I planned our London shoot to coincide with this. How about that?
Move on. It's okay. We understand.
So now we're shooting a sequel, and now we're fighting. Yeah, so Wives on Strike, the revolution. This is Wives on Strike, the revolution. Now we're fighting for women who are being abused. So fighting against domestic abuse.
So there's a message in your movie, and that is how you are taking the nation.
Yes.
I'd like
Thank you.
Over the hand. I'm coming to Pastor Wale next, and I'm thinking. So I want Pastor Wale to get ready. No, I'm not giving him the mic quite. No, he's 4 minutes putting it together. Okay. So while Pastor Wale, Ufoma, what other ways do you think we can take the nation? This is movies, and I need to say something, please, very quickly. We're going to run. We are supposed to close at 2. We close before 2, don't worry. But we need to break this down. Break this down very well. You are meant to take the nation. How are you going to take the nation? You are where you are for a reason. The platform that has been given to you is for a purpose and for a season. What are you going to do with that platform? That's what we're talking about. I find out that a lot of Christian entertainment, if you can call it that is supposed to appeal to the next generation is really substandard. And I don't know who is going to work with that. When I say somebody is there raising up his hands, going to work with that, but we're going to give Ufoma the mic next. We're about to round up this session. I noticed, right, when the Power Rangers are wearing proper costumes, right? And then Bible Man comes and you can see the police train or something. And they wonder, what is going on? And then we say we have music. Then they say Christian music. And then for that genre, you need to dump down in your brain, you know? Like it's going to be really bad, you know? But Reverend Celia, because we're Christians, we're just going to flow with it. Now, those who are born again very early like me, I was an SU. You were born again at 11 to 1980s. You are here. Yeah, we're dated, but we know each other. Those days when they say they want to sing Christian music, you hear it's only 2 chords. Unweke, 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 unweke. Pastor Abu was busy being rambunctious around pants. He didn't know. But we holy people. And there's no, it's all my songbird loves for freedom. And I thought this Christian journey is going to be hard. Because I left Dynasty, remember? Baby, here I am. Sing, he's not counting people who know the song. Be free. Ufoma, so what else can we do? I mean, there's a movie, someone is talked about. What do you think?
Still, as a filmmaker myself, an actor and filmmaker, I have always, people who went to secondary school with me, still show me their slum books where I had always wanted to make content for children. So, for example, my 2-year-old daughter came to my room once and says to me, "Mommy, I'm a good witch." I said, "There's problem in the land."
The good witch, did you get that?
So I knew that I had to wake up from wanting to do children content to actually doing children content because we understand the power that media has.
We're still talking about taking the nation. Are you getting it? Mm-hmm. Before they take your children from you.
In all honesty, it's the truth. My 5-year-old son can spell a lot of big words because we have some educational materials that have those words. He understands photosynthesis and all. Why? Just because it's in media. But much more than just the career, and I want to talk on something that I particularly picked up from Awesome Treasures. I think one of the ways with which I have been able to stand out differently in taking my world, as you put it, is the confidence that I have gotten from Awesome Treasures. So yes, it's the truth. We heard you saying today that if God resigns, you will still follow him. Mine is even funny. If you come today now, just tell me that all this dinner and I wash. Sorry, I can't translate pidgin. I know fit. I be worried girl.
Please don't be so Nigerian.
No vex.
This is Southwest World. Westminster Abbey is just around the corner. What on earth? Who brought these people here?
If at the end of time, you know, I'm told that everything I have believed in is a lie, this Jesus did not really come, or maybe he came and he was just, you know, one guy like that. And if I realize that all of this thing is just a hoax, I will still be grateful that I am the kind of confident Christian that I am today because it has kept me away from a lot of things. Like, I know too many things that I would have done. I'm curtailed with the fact that I have somebody that I have to answer to. And those are some of the things I've gotten from Awesome Treasures. Very like the testimony somebody gave talking about you. Remember when I had my son? I was pregnant with my son, and I called Esdra in the middle of the night. I also had, it wasn't even a spotting, it was proper bleeding. And I called her and I was panicking, and she was so calm, it was annoying. I was crying and all, and she said, Ufoma, what is the problem? I said, I'm bleeding, I don't know what's going on, it's thick clots, I don't know. And she said, Ufoma, blood is not child now, don't you have sanitary towel? The kind of confidence I have gotten from being in Awesome, it's like, sometimes you see me and you wonder, which kind of backing she get? And for me, that is the way in which I take my world. I go out, I want to do something, I know that I don't have everything I need. I say, I'll take them. And I usually take it.
Pastor Wale, is there a way we can take our world, maybe politically? What's the future for Christian in politics, even in this land? Because that's what I want. I'm here to cause trouble. I'm here to disrupt. That's why I'm in the UK. I'm here to wake you up from your slumber. You know, to make you know that you are not here for burgers, for sausages and milk, for constant light and mortgages. I'm here so that you will not forget your dreams. If you are in your home country right now, you'll be thinking of being an MP, you'll be thinking of being a senator. But you come here and then you think it's just enough to send money back. We're doing so well back home and you'll be shocked. So you really need to get up your game. You get what I'm trying to say? There's a guy who lives in a building that, well, we have property in New York. He comes from Ghana. We land at night. Reverend Sile is telling me we had all awesome leading ladies in Ghana, and I know the kind of people in the hall, you know, the electoral chair, the ministers of justice, people like that. And I said, things are going well in Ghana. And you've been in this same fractional ownership in New York for years. Every year I see you here. And you're telling me there's nothing happening in Accra. I'm saying there's nothing happening in Accra. It's all happening in Accra. So you see, it's happening in Accra, it's happening in Maputo, it's happening in Lesotho, it's all happening in Las Gidi. So you want to make sure. You want to make sure that it's happening in London. So that's why I'm here. Pastor Wale.
Thank you, Sister Jumoke.
Pastor Wale was my pastor 23 years ago. So you need to give him a hand. And I designed this church that different Hollywood people go and be shooting in, and they do not acknowledge the architect. But it's okay.
And just to say about Pastor Wale, he might be embarrassed by this, but you know, we desperately need people we can point to in the faith. Especially in Nigeria. I mean, I know Jumoke says a lot is happening in Nigeria, but a lot is also not happening in Nigeria.
A lot is happening in sectors.
That's the truth. The country needs a lot of prayers now. But we desperately in the faith need role models that can point us in directions, people who we can vouch for their integrity. And by God's grace, you know, he's a big brother to me. Pastor Wale is one of those people.
We're very proud of you, Pastor Wale, and thank you for being here.
I'm embarrassed.
I know. Pastor is just a pastor. He has to commend. He commended DC. He commended the testimonies. I'm learning. I'm taking notes.
Well, Pastor Agu alluded to this earlier on. It's posterity before prosperity. I think, you know, I was talking to a pastor in his 50s a few weeks ago, and he said as he's growing older, he's beginning to look at what legacy he can leave. And I said, you know, wouldn't it be wonderful if a young 20-year-old is also looking at their legacy? And so we must always be conscious of what we are leaving behind, grooming people that can stand in our shoes. I think that's very important. And I tell you, I once invited the U.S. ambassador to Nigeria to do a tour. He had been posted back to the States. And I was in the States. And so I just gave him a call. He lives in Boston. I was in Boston. And he took me out to dinner. And at dinner, he was talking about how in 1959, he made his first trip to Nigeria. That he just graduated from Harvard University in law, and he was an African American. And he joined the US Peace Corps and was sent to Nigeria. In Nigeria, he was sent to the University of Ibadan. And he was blown away by such a first-class university in the heart of Africa. Now, he went back after 6 months, and then 30 years later, he was posted to Nigeria. And he was posted as ambassador, and he was aching to go to UI to see how it was faring. When the opportunity came, because as an ambassador, you can't just get up and say, I'm going. When the opportunity came and he got to UI, tears formed in his eyes. And as he related this to me, this is an American, and I began to, what's gone wrong? And I come to the point that we must have generational succession. You cannot, you must strive to make those that come behind you better than you are. And this is a hard thing for Africans, because African leaders want to be the best that ever was. So it's posterity before prosperity. And what happens is, if you are focused on leaving a legacy, God will prosper you.
1 minute last word. So Pastor Agu is going to give us his last words. If you had something to say to us in a minute, what will that be?
Prayer changes things. That's it. That's it.
Oh, thank you so much, Pastor Agu. DC, come up. Moving on very quickly. When the time for prayer comes, realize that the forces that you are fighting are not anglicized. They don't carry any color passports. They're international. So deal with them, because you never know where they're coming from. Do you get what I'm trying to say? But I promise you that if you're ready to go with God on this appointment with destiny, you will be glad you came. You will testify next year. Please, can you thank Pastor Agu for me? Thank you so much. There is the person.
All right, just want to say to you, maybe just to add to what Jumoke has said, the prayer session that is going to take place, please take it seriously. And I say that on the back of what I have gleaned from a prayer retreat that I just came out of. This prayer session, take it seriously. You're going to have testimonies like you just heard from what God does in that. Prayer does change things.